something new now that we've not discussed previously. قَالَ قُلْنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَمَا لُبْثُهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Now the companions of the Prophet ﷺ asked, how long is Dajjal going to stay for on the earth? How long is his stay going to be? قَالَ أَرْبَعِينَ يَوْمًا. His stay will be for 40 days. How long for? 40 days. But يَوْمٌ كَسَنَةٍ وَيَوْمٌ كَشَهْرٍ وَيَوْمٌ كَجُمْعَةٍ وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ. 40 days. However, his first day will be equivalent to a whole year. From his 40 days, his first day will be equivalent to one whole year. And his second day, it will be equivalent to one whole month. And his third day will be equivalent to one whole week. And the remaining 37 days, they will be like your normal days. But here it's mentioned 40 days. However, in another narration, there's two narrations. I've brought one here and the other one I haven't brought from Sharh Sunnah, which mentions that he will be here for 40 years. This one mentioned 40 days, the other one mentions 40 years, and in there is completely the opposite. So here we said one day will be like a year, and that one is the opposite. That 1 year will be like a day, and opposite to it. So here in Ibn Majah Sharif, there's a narration as well, which mentions that he'll be here for 40 years. And the first year will be equivalent to half a year. And his second year will be like a month. And his third year will be like وَالشَّهْرُ كَالْجُمُعَةِ, and one of his months will be like a week. And the remaining days of his, they'll be like a spark. If you get a matchstick and you try to light it, just as you go like that, like a spark, it's just going to fly by. So one says 40 days, one says 40 years. How do we reconcile between them? Some of the muhaddithin have said that number one, it is metaphorical. That meaning that it is not actually going to be 40 years. This is just the Prophet ﷺ mentioning his severity and how when he is on earth, the circumstances and the way of living will be extremely, extremely difficult. So he is showing his severity. This is not literal. And an example of this is, if you are to be, the saying is when you are having fun, time flies. Time flies when you are having fun. And look at the opposite side. The other side of the coin is when you are in some difficulty, then it seems like time is going slow. It's unimaginable. It seems like eternity. For example, you have some sort of pain, toothache, and it's just 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock now, the dentist has just closed. And you've got to wait another whole 12 hours for the dentist to open again, and you've got that toothache. So you have to wait a whole 12 hours. Those 12 hours seem like eternity because of that pain. And maybe some of you haven't experienced toothache. So then I'll give you a more relevant example is football. Your team is winning 2-1 and it's the 90th minute. You've got 5 minutes stoppage time. It's 5 minutes stoppage time. The other team is attacking. Those 5 minutes seem like eternity for you. And obviously, if you're a Manchester United fan, then it's going to be 2-2 by those 5 minutes. By the time those 5 minutes pass, your team will concede. So that is how it feels. That it'll be 5 minutes, but it's going to feel like eternity. So that is what they are saying. That it is not literal by 40 years. It's just showing how severe it will be when he is upon earth. But before I get into number two, number one, this opinion does not seem correct. Why? It's because, what is the first thing, when I said that he will be here for 40 days and his one day will be like a year, what's the first thought that comes into your mind? You might have different questions. You might be amazed by this. Do you have any thoughts that come into your mind? Okay, listen to this next bit, because when the Sahaba Kiram, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ heard this, listen to this, subhanAllah, so amazing. The first thought that came into their mind, what about our prayer? SubhanAllah, we heard this and we'll be thinking, how is 1 day going to be like a year? We'll have different questions. What is their question? Their question is, what are we going to do about our salah? So what did they ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They said, Ya Rasulullah, ara'ayta al-yawm alladhi kas-sanati atakfina fihi salatu yawmin? قال لا ولكن اقدروا له. So they asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, the year that, do you see that day which will be equivalent to a year, will it be sufficient for us to pray just 5 prayers in that one day that will be equivalent to a year? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said no. 5 prayers will not suffice in that day that will be a year. Rather, you must estimate for it. And there are a few things that we learn from this saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The muhaddithin, they are able to deduce different things from this and a certain masala from this for those people who they in their country there is 6 months daylight and 6 months nighttime. So for example, if you go to the North Pole, it'll be 6 months daylight. They do not get any nighttime. The sun doesn't set there. And similarly, I think there's Norway as well. Norway, between April and August, there's a certain time where for 4 months the sun doesn't set there. So now the question is, what are they going to do about their namaz? For if there's no sunset, what's going to happen to Maghrib, Isha? So from this we learn that they must estimate it. Okay, I remember one time when in England we had long fast, 17, 18 or 19, 20 hours. This was a couple of years ago. We had long fast, 18 hours I think it was. But then when you see the fast of the people in Norway, if I remember correctly, it was something like their fast would close all the way at 11 o'clock at night, and they only had 1 hour to do iftari, and the next day fast would start. SubhanAllah. So they fast for 23 odd hours. So that's what we learn from this, that you must estimate it. And from this, I'm not going to go deep into this matter, but also in England, it applies to us as well, because there's a certain time during the year between 13th May and 31st July. I'm not going to mention the masla, but you will have realized that some people read their namaz, their Fajr namaz at 1:30 during this time period, and it is because of this masala. But I'm not going to explain it in detail. If anybody wants to know, they can ask me later on. So the first opinion was it was metaphorical. However, this opinion seems incorrect, because when the Sahaba heard this, that 40 days and one day will be like a year, what was their first thought about their salah? Meaning they took it to be literal. They thought that one day is actually going to be like a year. That's why they asked the Prophet ﷺ that how are we going to read namaz on that day? Will one day's namaz suffice? The Prophet ﷺ said no. Meaning the way the Prophet ﷺ also replied, if their thought was incorrect, he would have told them, no, I don't mean literally. But the way the Prophet ﷺ responded, that no, you must estimate for it, it shows that it is literal. So if it is literal, now we have the question, is it going to be 40 days or 40 years? So the answer to this is that it is literally going to be, one day will be equivalent to a year, and certain times it will be that the time will go very fast. And this is because, what will Dajjal say? This is mentioned in another narration. It is mentioned in another narration, I don't think I have it here, that Dajjal, he'll say to the people, Ana Rabbul Alameen, that I am the Lord of the universes. And you see the sun, it tajri bi idhni, it moves because of me, with my permission. It sets and it rises because of my permission. Who's going to be saying this? Dajjal. I am the Lord. In the third Sipara, in Ibrahim alayhi salam's incident, Alam tara ila alladhi hajja Ibrahim fi rabbihi an atahu Allahu al-mulk. إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت قال أنا أحيي وأميت. There was a king at the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he was fighting, he was claiming to be God. And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives life and who causes death. So the king, he thought he was clever. So he brought 2 people, he got his sword and he killed one person and he left the other person. And he said, look, I am the Lord, I caused him to die and I have let this person live. So then Ibrahim alayhi salam replies, قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who brings the sun from the east, so you now cause it to rise from the west. Okay, you thought you were clever with the first one of when I said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes life and death. Okay, if you are Allah, then bring the sun from the west. Allow it to rise from the west. The king, فَبُحِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. They were left, confounded. They didn't know how to reply to that. So similarly, causing the sun to set and to rise is from the powers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Dajjal will say this, that all of this is happening by my permission. Okay, if I cause this sun to stop and stop it from setting again, will you believe that I am your Lord? So they will say yes. So now the Dajjal will stop the sun from rising. So from this, now we understand that those days, which will be equivalent to a year, it will possibly because he'll have stopped the sun for that long. And some say this will be literally, he will have literally stopped the sun. And some say no, Dajjal is a very big magician, sahir. He is Dajjal because Dajjal means to mix. He will be the illusion artist. So he will be able to have some sort of fake sun. He will do some sort of magic which will create this illusion that the sun is not setting for a year, but in fact the actual sun will be setting and rising every day. But some have said no, it will be literal, that he will literally have stopped the sun, and these are some of the supernatural powers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have granted him. And this is what makes his fitna the greatest fitna on the earth from the time of Adam till the occurrence of the final hour, that he will be able to control the sun. So he will stop it. Then he will say that, okay, if I make the sun move again, will you guys believe me? Will you believe that I am your Lord? And they will say yes. So now he will cause the sun to move, and it will now be setting and rising every day very quickly. He will speed that process up until in one narration it comes, the Prophet ﷺ will be at one gate in Medina. You will not be able to get to the other gate, but the sun will have set. So from this we learn that his total stay, whether it's 40 days or 40 years, we learn that some days will be extremely long, some days will be extremely small. And if we understood through the narration of Tirmidhi Sharif, where it says one day will be like a year, the second day will be like a month, the third will be like a week, and the remaining 37 days will be normal. So we understand from this narration that his total stay will be 14 months and 14 days. 1 year, and then the other one was 1 month, so that's 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, and another 37 days. So that is in total 14 months and 14 days.